Coach Robb podcast, answering questions and eliminating frustrations about health, wellness, and performance since 1987.
Welcome to the Coach Robb podcast. We actually don't have a number for this podcast, Coach. This one's a little bit unexpected.
Well, good afternoon, man. And yeah, I guess we could call this a special edition if we were going to give it a title. I think that probably would be the best way to get it started here. But man, it's good to see you for more reasons than just one.
Yes, sir. This is definitely unexpected podcast. This is not one that we had on the calendar, but it's a very important one that Coach wanted to cover. And I guess we'll get into it. This is very unexpected. If you told me that Coach Robb was going to have a heart attack, I would have said you're a liar. But Coach, unfortunately, you did suffer a heart attack, and we kind of put this together today so you can kind of explain what happened and why it happened and some of the symptoms that you were facing that you were, relating to something else. So we just wanted to dig in. And I think, really the reason why we want to do this, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you wanted to bring awareness to people that may be having the same symptoms and suffering the same day-to-day illness, if you want to call it that, which could be something worse.
Boy, did you hit the nail on the head there. First and foremost, I want to thank you for taking time unexpectedly to put this together. I had to get this story out because I appreciate the kind words that you said, but I have to admit I was as equally shocked as you were. I try to work really, really hard to stay healthy. I like to practice what I preach. And, I've had people say to me, hey man, you're the guy that actually does your own, you're the guy in the video doing the pull-ups and the push-ups and that. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't want to be the guy that just talks about it. I want to show you what I can do. And I'm 55 years old at the time of this recording, and I try to keep myself in good shape. But as you start out in today's pod, yeah, I had a heart attack, and I wanted to share with everybody that it was unexpected. I do want to share kind of a timeline, and I do hope and ask for everybody's patience during this podcast, because I think you need to listen to it from beginning to end. Because as you listen to the timeline and you listen to some of the milestones of events that happen, I'm hoping that if you're going through them, I hope I can change your perspective by 1 degree. And I'll elaborate on what I mean by that here in just a little bit. I also hope that everybody will stick with us, because this show is very, very important to me. I'll elaborate here in just a little bit, but ironically, before I got admitted into the hospital that evening, Michaela and I were supposed to go to a fundraiser, a company that I have a very great relationship with, RLF Architects, Engineers, and Interior Design Company. I've put together some fun walks and I've done some wellness clinics for some of their employees. But on Saturday night, Michaela and I were supposed to go to a fundraiser, ironically, for the American Heart Association. And we're going to be putting a QR code up here. And here's my personal favor to ask of all the listeners. I've got close to 22,000 subscribers here on YouTube. If I could get 1,000 people to donate $5, that would make a huge dent in what we're trying to raise from a financial standpoint. RLF is going to be doing a walk on November 4th at the University of Central Florida. So if you live here locally, please join us. I would personally appreciate it. Obviously, this is something that has become a passion project for myself and for Michaela and our entire family. So I'm hoping if you guys have to bug out of the podcast for any reason, you'll come back. We'll have the QR code up. But I personally am asking that you would donate. I don't normally like to ask for money, but this is for a good cause. It's going to help with awareness. It's going to help make resources more readily available. I would deeply appreciate that, but we'll get the QR code up a little bit later. But Dan, I had a heart attack, brother. And
I'm a little pissed at you because this didn't just happen, right? You've had these symptoms going on. Yep. And for a couple weeks, I kept saying, Coach, I think you need to go be seen. I'm a little worried about you. And you're like Superman, Coach Robb. You're like Superman. Like, you can't be untouched. You're untouched. Like, Nothing bad is ever going to happen to you because you're fit, you're healthy, you eat well, like, um, but you had these symptoms, and I'm like, man, that just doesn't sound right. And then you finally made the decision, I'm going to go get seen. And that's when all this kind of came out. And so I think first I want to let's start with this. We have a theory, or you have a theory on why you had this heart attack, and because you're fit, you're you're in shape, you eat healthy, and you're the last guy in the world. I said this already. You're the last guy in the world that I would expect to get a phone call from saying, "Hey, I had a heart attack." So why don't you share with the listeners on why you, or what your theory is on why you had this heart attack?
Well,
And it, and
you're
it's
gonna
not
be
genetic, right? I didn't know, don't know if I asked you this before, but do you have heart issues in your family, like genetically?
Well, it's a great question. It was one that was asked by the physicians, and I don't honestly know because my dad left when I was very, very young, and I don't know anything about him. That's not to get a sob story or anything else, but my dad left very early, and so I don't know anything about my dad. On my mom's side, no. But hey, if you use the odds, right, there's a 50-50 chance that there could be some genetic disposition. I will say over the years, having my blood work done, there was no indication that there was a problem. I take a spoonful of my own medicine. I try to get my blood work done once a quarter, at least twice a year at the very least if I'm traveling a lot. There was no red flags that brought this on. You kind of teased about me disappointing you, but I'm going to disappoint you at even a higher level. These symptoms have been going on for a bit, almost 2 years. And again, I'm going to reiterate this over and over again, Dan. I hope people will be patient with me because I'm going to walk through why I didn't go to a cardiologist earlier. And like I said earlier, I'm hoping that people are listening to this going, hey, maybe I can resonate with that example. And I'm going to go through a bunch. There's going to be a lot of meat on the bone here. But I want to go back to your question. What do I think was the genesis behind all of this? Well, I do a lot of international travel. And to get into other countries, you have to have certain medical interventions that have to be put into place. And I had made some business commitments almost 2 years in advance. Anybody who's followed me, I had made a commitment to do the same thing with Whiskey Throttle. And I wasn't able to travel because there were a lot of what ifs in the air, whether or not planes were traveling or not. So Michaela and I, we rented a van and we drove across the country because I had made a commitment to that show. Now, I'm not Mr. Good Guy. I don't need a pat on the back. I'm not looking for a yada boy. What I'm trying to illustrate is I'm a man of my word. I had told David Pingree I'm coming out and I'm doing a Whiskey Throttle show. We got in a car and we went out and we met our obligation. I had made some obligations to go over to Ireland. I had made some obligations to go over into England. I had some performance camps. I had some speaking engagements. We're putting together a business relationship for those of us for those of you that follow us in the moto related world. NORA, it's a governing body over in the UK, very big, prominent group over in Europe. They wanted to start an amateur development program similar to what I have here stateside. Well, these arrangements have been put into place, like I said, almost 2 years in advance, just because I'd already had some commitments with traveling to Australia. So I hope that sets the context. I had to have some medical intervention to be able to get my passport to say, yep, I can come into your country safely. I'm not a health risk to anybody. I got that shot, and within a week, my athletic performance suffered significantly. My biofeedback indicators were showing things weren't going well. Resting heart rate was up. My HRV was going down. My aerobic capacity was negatively impacted. Well, if you know anything about getting intervention type work, right? When you have that done, what you're essentially doing is giving yourself what your body needs to build a resistance against that virus. Okay, I get it. I understand that. So, with that being said, I just figured let your body do what it needs to do so it can recover from getting sick. No problem. Well, I gave it a couple of weeks and then I started resuming training again at my normal level. Now, here's where this is where the timelines are going to start to really take shape. And I want people to pay attention to the timeline because this is where we get into the subject of, unfortunately, having a heart attack. I started going through and noticing that I couldn't warm up. So for those of you that follow me at all on here on YouTube, you know I'm a big advocate. If you want to have a higher quality workout, you've got to warm up. Well, Dan, I used to be able to, put on my running shoes and go run for an hour, no problem. Well, what I noticed was I could not run for an hour. I could only run for 40 minutes. And I noticed I could only run for 30 minutes, could only run for 20. It just, as you can imagine, the timeline got shorter and shorter and shorter.
Well, I remember you saying also that you could never get your heart rate up. Like
Yes.
it was your heart rate would never get elevated to even a normal, you know, uh, level. And
Yes.
that was one of your major concerns that you had told me about multiple times.
Well, and put those two together. I was having a hard time catching my breath, but I couldn't get my athletic heart rate up. You see kind of the ironic twist, and you're going to hear a lot of that. I'm not making this stuff up. If you looked at my Garmin dashboard and you looked at my resting heart rate, it wasn't like I doubled my training where my resting heart rate should go up, sign of overtraining. My HRV status was negatively impacted. Well, again, if you follow HRV, your HRV should never go up quickly or it should never drop quickly. That's a sign of overtraining or undertraining. That wasn't happening. This is where I want to jump into the timeline of I used to be able to exercise for an hour. I could ride my bike for 3 hours, no problem. And the duration that I could go before I became tired, that's a key word, tired, started getting shorter and shorter. Now, I'm going to kind of jump forwards and backwards because for the sake of keeping people's retention of, does this resonate with you? Is there any kind of correlation to some of your personal experience? Go back 2 years ago. My wife grew up in Memphis. And there's a run there called Parkway to Parkway, and Michaela's run it every year. We go back as a family thing for Christmas and we run it. Well, the year before, Michaela and I were two of the fastest runners there. Now, fast forward after I got this entire situation going, I couldn't even run a mile. I had to stop. Now, that's embarrassing for me, right? My wife's ready to run. She's ready to take off. I can't run, can't catch my breath. Chest hurts. Now, I'm thinking, do I think I have a heart attack? No, I just thought something, Now, again, this is where I'm going to play ping pong here. So please be patient with me. If I go back 2 years ago, doing a lot of international travel. Well, if you know anything about travel and time changes, that's very taxing on the human body. Didn't give it much merit, just figured different time change. So Michaela and I, we're in this beautiful sheep farm and we're in Ireland and we're trying to go out for a run. Air temperature is cool. The humidity is low. I can't run 30 minutes. I said, Michaela, I go, something's weird here. I don't feel like I'm stressed. At this point, we had been in the UK for about a month. So I'd gotten myself out. We were actually gone for 3 months just to kind of set the context. It's not a time change issue anymore. So my brain starts going, what in the world could it be? Well, we've been working on launching it. You guys are now aware of it. We were putting together the infrastructure of Complete Med Solutions. That's a blood evaluation service that I own where I have a group of physicians that look at blood work. I use that to help put together my training programs for my clients. So I just chalked it up to, man, my brain's on overload. I'm just tired because I'm trying to make sure that this business is on point. We're meeting our milestones. So this is where I want, Dan, stop and think about the word fatigued. You just recently got a new job opportunity. Congratulations, you got a promotion. Think about all the stress that goes to going through the interview process, getting your resume up to date, right? So you're not sleeping your normal sleeping. Maybe your appetite is suppressed because of stress. I just chalked it up to the same thing. Mm-hmm. So here we are, we're in a foreign country. Michaela and I, we stay in tune with exercising. We make sure we get our 9 hours of sleep. We eat cleanly, even when we're on the road, but yet my exercise is getting less and less. I can go less duration and it's taking me more of an effort. It's getting less and less duration because I have to physically stop. Now stop and think about this. As an athlete, I've been an elite athlete ever since I was in high school, right? All of a sudden now I'm losing my athletic edge. So that little birdie on my shoulder is like, yeah, well, at this time you're 53 years old, you're not a spring chicken anymore. I start making excuses, if you will, for why am I getting athletically, physically tired. I'm like, man, I just don't buy that. I'm 53, but I'm at least in decent shape. I think at this time, my body fat was like 11 to 13% at that time. Right now, my body fat's at 12%. So I work out anywhere between 10, 15 hours a week, give or take what's going on. And I hope I'm not being long-winded. I hope I can retain the listener's attention, because if you've been working out for a long period of time and all of a sudden you see your athletic capabilities being cut literally by 50, 60, 70%, I think that would raise a natural question for you. So I start looking at the idea of mental fatigue. Okay, well, I'm trying to launch 2 more businesses in 24. Okay, so I'm busy. Am I tired because of that? Could be, but there's no way to really say. So what do I focus on? I add an extra hour of sleep. I add a nap 3 days a week. I make sure I hit my nutrition. I make sure I hit my hydration. Dan, sound familiar to what we talked about
Mhm.
with you, with your riding and your training and everything?
Hold on a second. A
Yeah.
nap 3 times a week.
Yes.
Coach, geez.
I literally changed my work schedule around because I'm thinking, quit complaining about it. Your body is tired. You're like, over here behind the scenes at a corporate level, I'm trying to build 2 more businesses. I still have my current workload of clients. I've got my young family that that we have. So quit complaining about it, Rob. Get some more sleep. So on the weekend, I would take 2-hour nap Saturday and Sunday. And on Wednesday, I would take another 2-hour nap. I'm thinking, okay, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's see what happens. It didn't help. Now, on the subject of sleep, this is where it got scary. If you know me at all, I this is going to sound so fluffy, but I'm not a mean person. I'm not a vicious person. I was having nightmares of killing people. I was having nightmares of violence, just very, very aggressive type things. And I'm like, what in the world is this? I don't have any animosity towards anybody. I don't hold grudges. To me, when it's over, it's over. Dan, and you and I have talked about, we've spoken about this before. You and I may disagree on something. We'll hash it out and then we're best of friends. I mean, I don't hold grudges. Life's too short, right? I was married for 25 years and I always joke I was in counseling for 15 of it. I don't hold grudges. Life's too short. So with that being said, I'm like, and I even shared it with my wife. I said, babe, I'm waking up exhausted. My dreams are vicious. Even though I'm sleeping more, my sleep quality is going down. I'm going to reiterate biofeedback. Heart rate was up. HRV was in the tank. My athletic aerobic capacity was in the tank. Then I'm like, all right, dadgum, man, my sleep is not good. My athletic activity is getting less and less. Then I'm like, my low back is absolutely killing me. I'm like, well, man, start focusing on foam rolling, go to the chiropractor, get a massage. Lower back. Now I'm gonna expose myself here, no pun intended, but I couldn't bend over and put my boxers on. I'm 50 at this point. I'm at 54 going on 55. I can't even bend over and put my boxers on. Now I've always had I have lordosis, the curvature in the small of your back, because my quads are so tight from cycling for so much that pelvis is tilted forward and down. So my low back hurts. I've been dealing with that for years. Well, now it's worse than ever, to the point that I have to literally put my hand on the counter to put my boxers on. I'm like, man, I'm 55. I'm not 85, right? So that's that little canary talking on my shoulder. And I'm like, Dan, think about this. My aerobic capacity is down. My sleep dreams are not good. My biofeedback indicators are bad. My mobility is getting worse. My memory was horrendous. Like if I didn't write it down more so than I normally do, I couldn't remember squat. And I'm like, I'm not 85 years old, man, you know? And so you guys have heard me say publicly that I've been trying to teach myself the guitar. Well, I don't mind disclosing here today. One of the reasons why I was really committing myself to the guitar 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, is I was trying to stimulate that part of my brain where I'm like, dadgummit, I'm not going to let my old age, right? I'm going to challenge that gray matter. So I made a concerted effort. I added naps, made sure I get my 9 hours of sleep, made sure I nailed my nutrition. And I'm challenging myself. I literally was using my mouse with my left hand to try to stimulate my brain because I'm getting so scared about where the heck is my memory going, right? So I'm hoping this is starting to resonate with the listeners, because I'm not going to just buy into old age. I'm not going to just buy into, it's just the way it is. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm at least going to try to reverse this memory issue. I'm going to try to reverse this fatigue issue. Well, I was noticing that I wasn't enjoying my job for the first time in 35 years. And I said to Michaela, I said, I think I'm ready to fold shop. I said, I'm not enjoying it anymore. And Dan, you and I've talked about this off the record. I hate it when professional athletes are like, well, I'm just not enjoying it anymore. I'm like, well, it's your freaking job, man. It's just, there's sometimes you do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
This was different. This was, I don't have the mental patience for ignorance. I don't have patience for people knowing what to do and just simply not doing it. Where before I could be like, right, we need to talk about why. I just didn't have the patience to reverse engineer it anymore. So now I'm like, all right, the my job is my passion project. I love trying to make a difference. At this point, I'm like, babe, I seriously think I want to sell the company. I'm just not interested in doing this anymore. And that was to her a big red flag because for as long as we've been together, and Dan, you and I have talked about this as well, I love what I do. And as the old saying goes, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I've really, really enjoyed that for 35 years. I'm finding myself looking at, all right, how do I set my business up to sell it? What do I do differently? I can't sleep anymore. I'm already sleeping 9 hours during the week. I'm sleeping 10 hours on the weekend, 11 hours if you add a nap. I'm eating well. I'm still trying to exercise. I'm trying to challenge my brain. Nothing's coming around here. So I have some doctor friends and I started talking to them and they're like, man, you just have some symptoms associated with what we would consider long-term ramifications for this medical intervention that you did. Now, we weren't on a political soapbox. Like I said, I had to do what I needed to do to fulfill my obligations.
Well,
But they're saying,
these are symptoms that could go along with COVID, long-term COVID, as general
yes,
medical intervention or not, right?
yes.
So anyhow, go ahead, because I know people that have had some of these symptoms, without a medical intervention that have had COVID, right?
Yes. Well, and that was the thing that was interesting is I'm very fortunate. I've got a lot of medical doctors for clients. I've worked with a lot of people. I've got a good network of people. So for me, I'm like, all right, Rob, take an active role and responsibility. So if I go with my mental, fogginess, I'm like, all right, you're not challenging yourself enough mentally. So I started doing something new, using my mouse with my left hand, committing to the guitar as I've already articulated. Well, then my muscle soreness. All right. Well, I'll go to the chiropractor, go get a massage, foam roll every day, lay on my beamer. All right. Well, your aerobic capacity is not there. Well, maybe you're dehydrated. You're not eating enough. Connecting all the dots, if you will. Well, this brings us to the symptoms associated with long COVID. And this is where I want people to give me a little bit more of their undivided attention because you're going to hear me say this over and over again. I correlated and causated every single one of my symptoms. So for example, if you follow me on any of my videos that I've done, I've self-disclosed that for years, I've always committed myself to strength training, but I always get severe headaches when I lift, especially for swimming, I try to work on my shoulder strength. So I do upright rows, shoulder press, all the things that we do to build the structural strength of my shoulders for the catch phase of swimming. Well, every time I lift my upper body, I always get a headache. If you look at the muscles in the top of your shoulders, the upper traps, levator scapula, they all insert at the base of your occipital ridge, right where that hairline is at on the base of your head. Now be patient with me here. I start to correlate my headaches are associated with lifting weights. I've always dealt with it. Well, now my headaches are worse. I'm not lifting any harder. I'm not lifting more frequently. My headaches are worse. My fogginess in my brain is getting worse. My lack of mobility, muscle mobility, joint mobility is getting worse. I'm starting to become very irritable. I'm becoming intolerant. I'm very short-tempered. I've already said I wanted to sell my company. I've never articulated those words. I love what I do. If anything, I was going to, I would never think about selling my businesses. I'm just correlating. I'm like, okay, they say that if you have headaches, if you have bad temperament, if you have limited range of motion, if all the things that I've spent 20 minutes speaking about, if you go look up symptoms associated with long COVID, all the boxes matched up. So I correlated my symptoms with what they described as symptoms associated with long COVID. Well, Dan, I confided in you. I said, hey, man, I've got this tingling in my left arm. And if you know muscle tissue at all, I've had troubles in my shoulders with a little bit of tingling up in my biceps because of tight upper traps. I've had that for years. Not something new, but it has gotten a lot worse. I reach out to a couple of doctor friends, and one that I have a great relationship with, Dr. Brainy, was very straightforward. He goes, "You need to go to the ER. You need to get this looked at." He goes, "Because this is now moving from when you exercise. Now it's just when you're sitting at your desk. This is when you're sleeping." And I said, okay. I'll try to get into a cardiologist. I reached out to another friend here locally. He's like, "Here's the best cardiology group in Orlando." Well, like all of us, we get a little bit busy. A couple true 2 weeks had gone by, and I couldn't get a return phone call. Now, I'm not mocking anybody, everybody's business, but I couldn't get a return phone call. So I kept calling. Well, I finally get in and they say, "Well, do you have an EKG?" And I said, "No, I don't. I haven't been able to get in to see anybody." Well, you can't get in to see your cardiologist without an EKG. Now, let's hit pause for just a moment, Dan. It started over 2 years ago. I had commitments, had things that had to be done. I'm athletic. My athleticism starting to go by the wayside. Just existing as a human, symptoms really aren't lining up with what I don't have any bad habits. I've never smoked a day in my life. I don't have anything that would cause me to say, "Hey, Rob, is there a chance you're having a heart attack?" Now stop and think about that. We know the fact now. Anybody who's listening to this goes, "Yeah, you've had a heart attack." Well, if you correlate and causate headaches, mental fogginess, lack of mobility, irritability, bad dreaming, shortness of breath, muscle tightness, and pain, go look it up. They just say this is a byproduct of it. So I'm just trying to deal with it. Do I wish I had never had it? Absolutely. Did I need it to be able to internationally travel? Yes. I have to own it, right? Dan, you and I talked about this before we went live. I have to own my own behaviors. Am I happy with it? No. But I'm like, doggone it, I'm going to offset it. You fast forward now to where I could barely, I'm not able to sit at my desk without numbing in my shoulders. I'm having a hard time breathing. Now, when I say hard time breathing, I always envisioned when somebody's having a heart attack, I picture somebody walking down the road and keel over and they're laying on the ground, grabbing their chest, screaming, "I can't breathe," right? So I had some muscular discomfort. I've been having it for 2 years. I'm like, "Shut up, Buttercup. Let's push through this." Well, now I'm trying to get into the network here to be able to get an EKG, or excuse me, to get an appointment. They finally call me back, say you need an EKG. Okay, I'll do that. Well, I'm busy during the week. Not an excuse, just explaining where I'm at because I know you weren't happy with me, Dan, so I apologize. But I now get to where I go to the gym, and this was actually the week before I was able to get in to get an EKG. If I'm being confusing, Dan, because you're on the listening side, if I've screwed the timeline up or it's confusing or something's missing, please let me know.
I think you're good.
So Michaela and I, we go to the gym. We do on Saturdays, I like to do what I call the 90. I'll do 30 minutes of lifting. I'll do 30 minutes of speed work on the treadmill, and I do 30 minutes of swimming. It's just one of my favorite things to do on a Saturday. And then on Sunday, we do 90 minutes on the bike ride. That's what we're doing currently. So I go to the gym. I'm lifting weights. I've got this screaming headache. I'm thinking, "Shut up, Buttercup." It's just you're lifting weights, right? This is typical. It's not the first time it's happened. I go and I get on the treadmill, and I always walk for 5. And then I do my speed work for 30, and then I walk for 5. Well, I'm walking for 5, and I'm like, Michaela was beside me, and I looked at her and I go, "I can't do it." She goes, "What do you mean?" I go, and for the sake of the listeners, Dan, you remember when you were a kid and you would siphon gas out of the lawnmower to be able to get motorcycle gas?
Oh yeah.
That's the burning that I had in the like down in my base of my throat, down like where my esophagus is at. I'd had that on and off. Like when I would exercise, that was the burning sensation that I would have. And then it would go into my chest. So if you look at, I used to be able to run for an hour, no problem. Then I was saying earlier, it went to 40 minutes. That's because that burning sensation. And then the burning sensation would show up at 30 minutes. And then the burning sensation would show up, a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier. So now I'm on the treadmill and I'm trying to walk for my 5 minutes. Now, earlier in the week at work, I'd had that burning sensation, but I just chalked it up to, you got a lot going on professionally. You've got a lot going on. You're still working out. You see how all these things stack up. And I just kept excusing them. Here we are now on a Saturday, go to the gym, get the weight workout done. I go to the treadmill. I can't finish my 5 minutes of a warm up. And I'm like, all right, the gym was a little bit warm. I thought I'll just go swim in the pool because the water's cool. And I can usually swim about 2,000 to 3,000 yards in an hour. So I get in, and normally my warm up is 600 yards. For those of you who swim, down and back's 50 yards. I got down and back, and I had to lay on the side of the pool. I couldn't do more than 50 yards. Usually I can swim 2,000 to 3,000. I couldn't swim a 50. And now my brain's starting to get a little concerned. So I'm like, don't be a dumbass and find yourself at the bottom of the pool. You know, as we always joke, when you're running, you get tired, you can sit down. You're cycling, you get tired, you can sit down.
Yeah.
You get tired in a pool, you can drown, right? No games here. But today something was a little bit different. I thought it doesn't make sense. Normally I'd have to stop and start, but I've never had it to where like after literally I can swim a 50 in, 35 seconds, 40 seconds comfortably. All of a sudden now I'm on the edge of the pool, 40 seconds in going, what the heck? I'm like, all right, I'm done. So Michaela's on the treadmill. When I do my 90, she runs for 90 minutes and she sees me walking in and right. If you do the time backwards, right, Dan, I lifted for 30 minutes. I walked for 5. So now we're 35, 40 minutes into her run. I go to the pool. I'm back in there 10 minutes later and her eyes get this big.
She knows something's wrong. Yep.
She knows something's wrong. Now, sometimes you need good people around you because you can't see can't see the forest through the trees here. And so I'm like, yeah, something's not right. She goes, okay. So she stops her workout. We go home and we shit, shower, shave, and I get a little bit to eat. And I go to a walk-in clinic. And I guess, as they could say, the rest is history, because I walked in to get my EKG and the assistant, they do the EKG. And I kind of noticed their disposition's a little bit antsy all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And you know how you hear them go out in the other room, and I hear them talking about the EKG, and the urgent care nurse comes flying in. I mean, literally, like burst the door open. Super cool lady. She goes, just to let you know, I've been an ER nurse before, and you need to go to the ER right now. And she said it with a straight face. She goes, I'm not trying to scare you. She goes, but this EKG is wrong at every level. Wow. And she showed me where this is supposed to be up and it was down. And I'm thinking to myself, this lady doesn't know me from Adam, but she has no reason to blow smoke up my skirt. Her sending me to an ER isn't going to make her money. And she goes, I just can't emphasize it. She goes, you are a ticking time bomb and you're on borrowed time right now. And I'm like, I'm glad I came in. So I walk out to the lobby and Michaela's sitting there and, she's a little bit nervous, but this is where I think the listeners need to understand the way you see me right now. That's how I was in the gym. That's how I was when I got out of the pool. That's why I have to reiterate. I always envision somebody gasping for their heart. Oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack. Yeah, I had tingling in my arm, but it stopped at my elbow. I recently have had problems with my eyesight. FYI, if you go and you look at long-term symptoms, reduction in vision is a byproduct of it. I chalked it up to I'm 55, right? Well, the glasses that you normally see me in, they're transitional. So you'll see me tilt my head up like this. Well, even as I do it right now live with you, I can feel there in my upper traps and between my shoulder blades, I can feel the knot. And when I do that, I feel it radiate into my shoulder. I chalked it up to that, right? Mm-hmm. So I come out of the ER, I come out of the urgent care, back room, and I come out to the front, and Michaela's sitting there and she goes, what'd they say? I said, we've got to go to the doctor. We've got to go to ER. And she kind of laughed. I go, no, seriously. They say we're on borrowed time. Now, Dr. Brainy had told me a month ago, it's transitioned from it's under exercise induced load to now it's no load to now it's starting to bother you. And I said, okay. So this is where I have to come clean with the listeners. And this is, if I get choked up, I apologize. It's not my intention. I took you from 2 years previous. I brought you all the way through the athletics. I brought you through kind of how I was noticing something was wrong. I took an active role and responsibility. I did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, and they're like, man, if you just look at the long-term symptoms and you look at what you're going through, the dots just keep connecting to one another. So I wasn't trying to be a worrywart, but I was not being neglectful. I wasn't like, oh, I'm tougher than this, I can push through it. I thought, you made a choice. You've gone through the journey here. You have to own what comes with it. And yes, a lot of it is what we don't know. And I own that, right? I've brought you from 2 years ago, and I brought you up to my walking into the ER. Now I need to back up a week. The Wednesday before, Michaela and I, on Wednesdays, I do my membership webinar, and one thing leads to another. Whenever we do our webinar, we always bring in Uber Eats. We have a nice dinner together, and we tend to go to bed pretty early right after that. While I was brushing my teeth, I couldn't catch my breath. And this is, Dan, probably one of the scariest moments, because when something's wrong and you don't want to admit something's wrong, but you don't know exactly what's wrong. It's kind of like when you sense somebody's like something wrong is going to happen to you, whether it's with your daughter or your wife or whatever. I'm brushing my teeth and I'm like, man, just something doesn't feel right. So I walked in, and Michaela and I, we always talk a few minutes. That's something that we like to do, is we always kind of like to talk and share about our day before we go to bed. And I was laying there and I just looked at her and I said, babe, I just don't feel right. And my heart's kind of racing a little bit. And at this point, I'm thinking, are you talking yourself into anxiety? You're having a parent teacher conference. And I'm hoping that I'm setting the context that I'm not a worrywart. I don't jump to worst case scenario, but I also don't try to act ignorant and belligerent to, I'm tougher than the situation. So it's this constant game of ping pong that you and I talk so much about. So I'm laying in bed, and I just said to Michaela, I said, something doesn't feel right. And I looked at her and I said, if I don't make it through the night, just know I love you. And she goes, what? And I reached over onto my nightstand and I grabbed my phone and I text my boys and I said, I love you and I'm proud of you. I didn't want to say, I think I'm dying. I didn't want to put them in a fear, but I thought, if I don't make it through the night, I definitely need them to know I love them and I'm proud of them. And I wanted my children to know that. And I said it to my wife, to her eyes. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I didn't think I was going to make it through the night. Now, did I feel like I was having a heart attack? No, I thought that I was going to succumb to the long-term ramifications of something that we didn't know a lot about. That's just where my heart was.
Yeah.
Did I feel like I was having a heart attack? No, I've been feeling these symptoms for 2 years. Yes. When the symptoms reared their ugly head, has come at various times. Yes, you could argue it's gotten a little shorter. Yes, you can, again, now in hindsight, right? As I share this, everybody, they're like, you're an idiot, you're a dumbass. Why didn't you do that? Please stop. I'm looking at it, researching, talking to people, going, these two just correlate with one another.
Yeah.
So do what you can to try to offset it. That's all I was trying to do. And that night is when I had a full-blown heart attack. I know it now. The doctors, and I'll talk about it here in a brief moment, but that was the night that I had a full heart attack and I woke up the next morning. Now, do I wake up in the morning and I'm tired? Yeah. I just share with you, I wake up tired every morning. Am I sleeping 9 hours? Yeah. Is my sleep quality garbage? Yeah. You see how I've been trying to get the good sleep. I've been trying to get the hours. I've been eating well. I've been trying to manage stress. I've been exercising. I've been doing it right. The only way I know how. But that night I knew something wasn't right. And sure enough, that night I had a heart attack.
And we did a podcast that Friday.
Yeah.
And that's when you told me, hey, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be seen. This is what happened to me on Wednesday. And I said, you get your ass to the doctor.
Yep.
No excuses. Don't mess around, because something's wrong.
Yep.
Something's wrong, man. I'm so thankful that you finally realized that you needed to go, because well, I'll let you share the story. I mean, you wouldn't be here if it was me that was in the situation. You'd be going to my funeral.
Yeah.
And because you are in the shape that you're in is the only reason that you survived this.
Well, I appreciate it. And I think you're in better shape than give yourself credit for. And that's what brings us up to the current, right? So now I didn't know I had a heart attack on Wednesday. I didn't feel very good, but I wake up the next morning and I'm exhausted. Nothing new. Sore everywhere. Nothing new. Lack of mobility. Nothing new. Mental fogginess. Nothing new. Just another day in the office, right? I'm not stubborn, but I have businesses to run. So I'm like, all right, Michaela, we'll try to go Saturday. So I go to the gym on Saturday. I lift, can't run, can't swim. And then we go. And that brings us up to where you just said, Dan. So now I go to this doc. She says, your EKG looks horrible. You're a ticking time bomb. Get to the ER. I go to the ER. Based on the EKG, They immediately stick me in the stomach to start the blood thinners. They start an IV drip with blood thinners. And now it's just a whirlwind for the next 4 to 5 hours. And I went to a particular hospital for a multitude of reasons. It's beyond the scope of why we're talking about it today. Unfortunately, that particular hospital does not have the ability to do open heart surgery. So the local hospital that they wanted me to go to, and this is not to get on a soapbox about hospital care and all that goes with, there's no beds. So now, just to kind of set the context, I go to the walk-in clinic at around, let's call it 12 noon. I'm now in the ER by 1 o'clock, and I'm on IV drips and all these, blood thinners. Well, at 8 o'clock p.m., they still didn't have a room to send me to the other hospital. And they said, we're just going to keep trying until we can find you a room. Well, at 2 o'clock in the morning, they come into the ER and they go, look, there's no rooms available. We're going to admit you. You're going to spend the night here. Well, it's never neither here nor there, but I had eaten at 10 o'clock in the morning before going to the gym, and now it's 2 in the morning. And they finally say, look, we're going to admit you here. You have to stay here tonight. We'll wait for a bed. Now, at this point, I'm thinking I'm on blood thinners. Now I'm starting to get scared because I'm like, because I didn't go earlier. Mm-hmm. And the doctor in the ER was fantastic. He said, we don't know what's going on with you. They're going to have to go in and do a heart cath just to do a search and discovery. We have no idea. We have no way. When I was at the first ER, they did a CAT scan. They did blood samples. And when I say blood samples, what they're doing is they're measuring the enzyme level in your bloodstream. And this is pretty powerful. The active enzymes give off an indication of the stress that the heart is going through. So there was clear indication that the heart was under stress. Again, we still don't know that there's blockage. We don't know that there's even an issue. All they know is EKG didn't look right. Enzyme levels are extremely high. They're starting with blood thinners on the outside looking in. The next morning comes, they still have no rooms available. It's now 8 o'clock in the morning. It's now 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. Well, now you're almost 24 hours since I went into the walk-in clinic. And now I'm starting to get scared because am I going to make this? Like, what is going on? I'd sent Michaela home because what's the good with her sitting there, right? Yeah. And as a man, I'll share this on a public format that I wouldn't say to her, especially when I don't want her to watch me die of a heart attack. That's where my head's at. And as morbid as that is to hear me say that now, you put yourself in that position. Would you want your wife to be sitting beside? Yeah, it's going to suck that she wasn't there when you went. But again, my brain is still back to a heart attack is going to be massive. It's going to be quick. But nobody needs to see somebody else have a heart attack. That's my thought. Not a justified rationale, but that was the way I rationalized it. So I'm like, you go. Now all night long, I can't sleep because I don't know what's going on. And then you get the parent-teacher conference going, you're an idiot. You're stupid. Why did we wait this long? Blah, 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 blah. And then I literally, through this extensive parent-teacher conference that I had for 15 hours, I correlated every one of my symptoms as a byproduct of long COVID. People I spoke to, they're like, yeah, dude, unfortunately, we don't know. But if you go to Google and you look at the symptoms of COVID, foggy head, lack of joint mobility, aggressive, everything I've shared 45 minutes of saying the same thing over and over again, I'm hoping it's resonate with our listeners because here's what happened. I get a phone call. Yep, we've got a bed for you. So I get driven across Orlando and I get brought in, and this incredible doctor, Dr. Talley, literally meets me and he says, I've been waiting for you to get here. He goes, nothing looks good. I'm like, huh? Now, just a little side note, I didn't realize he was the one that was he was calling the first hospital trying to get me in, but they had no place to park me. This gentleman was on the phone checking in with the ER doc all night long. Never met me, never seen me. This gentleman comes in on his off day on a Sunday and is meeting me as I'm brought in from the ambulance and says, we need to go in. We need to go. He says, I don't mean to scare you. We may find nothing, but I'm just telling you, based on your elevated enzyme levels, I don't like what I see. I said, I'm in. I'm in 100%. He explains the procedure. They're either going to go through the wrist, they're going to go through the femoral artery, blah, 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 blah. And then I get the scare of my life. He goes, we will not put you under. You will be awake while we do this. And I'm like, I don't like to give it an IV.
Yeah,
right?
me neither.
no way, Jose, you're going into my chest and I'm going to be awake. No. Of course, I didn't say that because I'm not going to be a pansy, right? And I'm like, squeeze me? I'm going to be awake. And he makes a comment that takes my breath away. He goes, you're going to feel something before we're going to see something on the screen. And I need to know if something's wrong. And I'm like, freak, man.
Wow.
The magnitude of this is getting, because now you're talking to a cardiologist, right? I don't know about you. I've met some cardiologists. I'm like, yeah, there's some very smart people. And I'm thinking at this point, this guy's going in my chest. This guy's going in my heart.
Yeah.
It's pretty surreal feeling, right? You're talking to a gentleman that in the next hour is going to be looking at your chest from the inside out. Forever thankful that there's people like this, the nurses and everybody. I go in, they put us under the anesthesia. You're cognizant of what's going on. They do a localized. It hurts like heck. But hey, I'm thinking, shut your mouth. We got bigger things to worry about.
Yeah.
And so the procedure begins, and I hear, the prep takes about 40 minutes. I get in there, and the doctor walks in, and it goes deathly silent. And the doctor starts giving orders. Well, the first thing he starts ordering is, what is it that we need to see? What are we looking for? We're looking at if there's any kind of blockage. The point is they got to get through. So they put this big long tube through your femoral artery as a feed. Well, he says there's going to be a little bit of pressure and you feel them pushing something in. Well, it's a feed of plastic that's that long that goes up your femoral artery. You feel some pressure. I'm going to shorten the conversation up just for the sake of time. But next thing I know, I'm not feeling anything in my chest, which I don't know about you, but that was what I was envisioning. Like they say you're not going to feel anything. And I'm like, how are they not going to feel anything? And thank the Lord they don't. And I hear him speaking to the other technicians that are in the room. And he says, we have a complete blockage. Now I'm thinking, complete blockage of what? I teased about this on Johnny Hopper's show. I'm like, is the door blocked? What, like, what's blocked here? I'm assuming you're talking about my chest, but I don't know about you. I'm not an expert on what the discoveries are. Next thing I hear is the banter between the technician and Dr. Talley saying they're discussing what size is the stent going to be? And I'm like, well, golly, is there not a one size fits all?
Yeah.
And long story short, literally the left side of my aorta, the aorta, you have two, not aortas. You have the two arteries that come out of your heart, and the left side was 100% blocked. And this goes back to what you said earlier. The doctor said, because your cardiac output was so good, the right side of your heart was able to distribute enough blood that you didn't die, but we do have some internal damage to the heart. And he goes, there's no way that we can really tell right now. Anyway, he wasn't having that conversation with me during it. I'm just trying to shorten up the conversation. The procedure goes on. I'm in there for close to an hour. And when it's all done, he's trying to explain to me, they have kind of like this glass that you can kind of see them, but you can't see them, but you can audibly hear them. And they're asking, are you okay? And all that goes with it. And so when he's done and finally, I feel him doing all the closures and they're closing everything up. And one of the technicians is starting to pull the tube out. And oh my gosh, I've felt pain in my life. But if on a scale of 1 to 10 was pain, this was 1,000.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what and my back is arching on the table and I can't catch my breath and I'm trying not to cuss. And the doctor's trying to tell me what's going on and I'm trying to listen to him. And I think it's part of a distraction, which, they're very good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, he goes, you had 100% blockage and I'll show you in a minute. And so this technician is holding my femoral artery so I don't bleed out. And at the same time, they're trying to pull this long tube out, which is the feed for what they do to get the stent up into your heart. Well, the femoral artery is right next to a huge nerve. And those two were touching each other and it was sending me through the Richter scale.
Wow.
And they're like, man, you got to breathe. And, I'm trying to breathe. I'm diaphragmatically breathing. I'm trying to not be a pansy. I've never felt such pain in my life, but hey, die or go through this. That's what I kept telling myself. Shut up, pansy.
Yeah.
You're at least feeling this instead of options are not very good.
Yes.
So at any rate, that gentleman was super patient. It took about 10, 15 minutes for that pain to finally subside. And he kept telling me it would. And then sure enough, it fell off pretty quickly. And the doc rolls the TV over and he goes, let me show you something. And the only way I can explain it is imagine driving down a cul-de-sac that's got a dead end at the end of it. And that's where on the left side of my heart, that's where the little bit of blood was trickling in and it was running into the dead end and it was going nowhere. And then he showed where the right side of the heart, you could see where the blood was circulating around. So it was trying to come around and feed as much as it could. And that brings us up. Again, I'm trying to be for the sake of time. I go in, I had to stay under observation for 3 days. And, obviously the doctors did a great job. And so, yeah, here we are, man. The doctor came in and said that the right side of the heart had enough cardiac output to deliver enough oxygen. He said by the best of timelines, the best that they can count up is I've had over 25 small heart attacks. And the one on that Wednesday night was the most severe. And he said, I don't know why you lived. He says, you've got a bigger purpose. And, he's a faith-based doctor, which I appreciated. And I said, I appreciate that, and I thought I was on this earth for a reason. And I thought what I do for a living was my passion project. And as I said at the beginning of today's pod, my passion's changed a little bit, because that's why I appreciated, Dan, you putting this impromptu one together, because I just correlated a lot of symptoms to long COVID. I'm not stupid. I'm not ignorant. I do try to educate myself. I do ask a lot of questions. I do network with as many people as I can. And I don't want our listeners to fall victim to the same. And I say victim, maybe that's not the right word. But I could have been a victim of my poor choice of not going and getting it sought out. Dr. Brainy had told me, literally 6+ months ago, that may be something you want to get looked at. They're just going to put you under a stress test. They're going to see what's going on. And as I said, it got to where it wasn't even under a load of exercise. It was just sitting at my desk. It was laying down to go to bed. And I'm here to talk about it. And I'm forever thankful. Yeah. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful to have my friends. I don't want one of our listeners to correlate chest pain, muscle tightness, foggy memory. And here's what I want to close with. When that doctor put that stent in, he literally put his head around this glass and he goes, do you feel a difference? And I'm thinking, yeah, I do. And he goes, does your sternum hurt? That's that bone right in between your chest. And I said, yeah, it is. It does. And he goes, good. I'm like, what? He goes, welcome to the world of having fresh oxygen on the left side of your chest. Now, I understand it now because he came in and told me what all that meant. At the time, it didn't really resonate with me, but I'm hoping it's going to resonate with our listeners, because I can tell you every single nurse and doctor's name. And I was in that hospital for 5 days. Stop and think about that.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember things. I had to write stupid things down. And I can tell you Dr. Knight, Dr. Talley, I could tell you Alicia, I can tell you every single person that's in there. I have not had one nightmare since that stent went in. I've not had one burn in my chest. I literally, at the hospital, could bend over and put my boxers on.
And you feel like, you feel like a brand new man.
Think about how stupid I was. Now, I can call myself stupid because I have hindsight. I can look at it and go, dude, your brain wasn't getting oxygen, so you couldn't focus. You couldn't remember things because of focus. You're having nightmares because you can't get enough oxygen. You can't catch your breath during a warm-up because you don't have oxygen. I just correlated it with long-term symptoms associated with the COVID. Mm-hmm. And I almost cost me my life. And I don't want that for any of our listeners. And that's why I'm hoping, and I said it at the beginning and I'll say it again here. I hope you guys, if I can get 1,000 of you to donate $5, I'd be forever grateful. I've got 22,000 here on YouTube. If I can get 1,000 of you, because it's my new passion project. And I've spoken to the American Heart Association. They're big on knowledge. I thought I knew. Gosh, I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping this pod here, people will give it the full time that we've given. Again, Dan, thank you for being patient and allowing me to describe it, because there's no shortcut way for me to be able to describe symptoms, timelines, situations, and outcome without giving the full context. Because we may have people that go, yeah, I've got a low back pain. Who cares? Well, is that really, if you look at your timeline, does it make sense? Like if you have a bulging disc from a car accident, sure, I'm not correlating and causating those together, but don't make the same mistake I did. I live to tell about it. And I'm forever thankful that the RLF group is doing this. Like I said, there's going to be American the Great American Heart Walk at the University of Central Florida, November 4th. If you're in town, come join us. If you can donate here on the screen, we've got one of these QR codes where you can donate from anywhere in the world. I personally, and I've never been one to ask for money, I'm asking today. If you guys would just donate $5 with me, if I get 1,000 of you, I'd be forever grateful, because I want to make a difference, and not in my name, but in your name. Everyone who donates, it's in your name, guys. I'm just thankful I'm here to talk about it. I'm glad I've got a platform to talk about it, but I'll never take that platform for granted ever again. And Dan, that's why I appreciated you on an impromptu. I wanted to get this message out, not in a fluffy, woe is me, I'm a victim. No, I'm a victim of my own stubbornness, a victim of what I thought I knew. And again, I can only go off of the research, and how many of our listeners are going to do the same thing or would have done the same thing and just correlate, causate, go, yeah, I don't need to go to the doctor. If your chest hurts at all, and I know everybody has their frustrations associated with healthcare, it's expensive. I get it. But your life is worth it. Your family and friends are worth it. I live to tell about it. And that's why the title of this is so, poignant, is I consider myself healthy, not in an arrogant way, but I work hard. My biofeedback indicators indicate it. And guess what? I wasn't above a heart attack. And it wasn't the typical heart attack that I always anticipated, somebody grabbing their chest and dropping to their knees, gasping for air. It's just little things here, little things there. So
Well, you got lucky, because
I did.
some people don't experience the one you did, and they experience the bad one where they don't have an opportunity to go get help. And
Absolutely.
I'm thankful that you finally did. And I mean, I don't know how to bring this up. Like, I'm just gonna say it. You were against the medical intervention, and you went and got it because you wanted to travel, you wanted to keep your commitments. But in the end, nothing is worth your health and putting your health at risk. Nothing. And if you believe in the medical interventions, that's great. Just make sure you do the research and make sure that it's right for you. But man, coach, if I've always gone through life with, what's in my gut, and always follow your gut. If your gut's telling you no, stick to it, because 99% of the time your gut is right. And so I hope everybody takes that away from this podcast, to listen to your gut, do what you feel is right. But don't ignore symptoms, and don't ignore what God and your body is trying to tell you, because this could have been a lot worse. And again, you're Superman to me, and nobody would ever have expected this. And I'm so grateful that you're still with us. I'm so grateful.
I appreciate it very much. I do want to say two quick things. First and foremost, I want to thank each and every person that's a first responder. You save my life. You save people every day, and words can't express our level of gratitude. And something else that was brought up, and I brought it up on Johnny Hopper's show, and somebody took it out of context. And I'd mentioned vaping. And what I had said to Michaela was, and this is not to frustrate any of our listeners, I'm so thankful I'm not 55 years old, 100 pounds overweight, and addicted to nicotine, right? Whether that's dipping or vaping or cigarette smoking or occasional street marijuana or whatever you do, right? And I know some people do the CBD for the, painkillers and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. If you are, regardless of your age, and I don't think it's age relevant, talking to these medical care, we don't know certain things about certain vaccinations. We don't know the thing that was a big topic of conversation is this vaping. And what a lot of the people in the medical world were saying is they don't have enough research on vaping. You have a very concentrated amount of liquid that has more chemicals in it that's being injected in through a mechanical device. And they're saying we're going to see literally a pandemic associated with vaping, that we just think it's benign because you're not lighting something up. my plea to everybody who smokes, vapes, dips, and all that, please do it for yourself and stop. And talking to these healthcare practitioners, like they said, there's nothing more frustrating than to see somebody who didn't stop and think about it or thought they could stop at any given time, and then it's not until their body breaks down. That's not coming from me. That's coming from the healthcare practitioners. What, like you said, Dan, if your gut's telling you it's not healthy, don't do it. Whatever it is, the vaping, the dipping, and all that goes with it. I don't know. I can't imagine the frustration of that, because I've got a doctor's appointment this upcoming Thursday, and one of the difficult conversations is they're going to be doing some analysis to figure out what the damage of the heart is. And the doctor says he thinks this is close to 15 to 20% damage. But as the doc said, at least you have a chance to try to repair it.
Yeah.
The practitioners were saying if your heart is filled with tar and all these other byproducts of these chemicals, that can't be repaired. So stop today. Yeah, there might be some damage done, and it may even be irreparable, if that's appropriate English word. It's not repairable, but stop. Stopping today it's one less day that you do it. I'm not saying it's easy. Go get help. Get the support crews. Do whatever it takes for yourself, for your family, and everybody that loves you and cares about you. Because that was the thing that I realized is I wasn't going and doing certain things because I thought I understood it. I just thought my muscle pain, my mobility, my fogginess, I'm not going to say a justification, but I had something that I'm going to keep going back to correlate, right? I could correlate these symptoms with what I read online and the professionals I spoke with. So something that's voluntarily, you're injecting a chemical that is not healthy for you, man, please stop for the sake of yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not a super goody. I'm not better than anybody else. I lost my mom to emphysema, and she never got to see my two sons. And I'll never forget her being on her deathbed crying, saying, "I'm sorry." She never got to see him.
Yeah.
You never got to see him grow up, I should say. She saw my older son, she got to know because he was 4 when she passed away. But my younger son, coming up on 2, he has no memories of my mom.
Yeah.
And that's a tough pill to swallow.
Definitely is.
Yeah.
We talk about it every show. We'll kind of wrap this up,
Yep.
Coach. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the show. But one thing I'm going to ask of everybody is make sure you send this link to the YouTube, to this specific show, to somebody that you love, somebody that maybe is addicted to nicotine and is a smoker, or somebody that you've heard maybe has some of these long-term COVID symptoms. Please send this to them, because it could save their life. And that is the purpose of this show, Coach, that you wanted to make sure that we could potentially save somebody's life by making them aware of your symptoms and what it ended up actually being. And
absolutely.
I don't have anything else to add. I'm super grateful for you. I'm super grateful that you lived through this. I love your brother. And
love you too, man.
Yeah.
I'll just wrap up by saying,
this is a tough one for me, because you have done so much for me, and you've done so much for everybody in the motocross community, or the cycling community, the swimming community. And I've said this 5 times on the show, you are Superman to all of us. And let that be known, that if Superman can have a heart attack, you sure as, us as listeners sure as hell can. So make sure to take care of yourself.
Well, I appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody who follows, stay with us all through this show today. I hope it's made a difference. I want to give my love and respect to each and every one of you. Thank you for supporting the channel. And just thanks for being friends and families, directly or indirectly, through the athletic community, health, wellness, and anywhere in between. Dan, thank you so much. Love you, brother. Appreciate you. Talk soon.
Thank you, guys.
Peace.